Hello, welcome to the first episode of Fresh Chats with Steph. Today we are here with
Tish Johnson
and
Jeff Aribabor.
And they are here, Aribabor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I've been needing to know how to say,
Yeah.
Aribabor. Now, Jeff makes sure all his students know how to say Aribabor before the end of the first week.
First week, yep.
Okay, yes, that's good. Yes, you have to respect that. So we're going to get started now. We have topics posted. Our topic for today in episode 1 is bad kids. And we're going to talk about what that means. We're going to talk about our educators, what the educator's role is, what the parents' role is, what the school's role is when it comes to behavioral issues that educators face. Do they accept it or do they help them? So we're going to go ahead and get started. As we go through the conversation, if you have comments, any questions, if you want to interject with a comment, hop right in. And Jeff is going to turn his volume down. And so we're going to get right into it. So my first year as an administrator, I had a sign on my door, and the sign said, "There are no bad kids, only bad choices, so choose to be great." And I would reiterate that with students when they came in because they had a discipline referral. And so I had multiple educators that would walk in my office and be like, "Girl, bye. It's bad kids, and they know they bad, and you know they bad, so I don't even know why you had it up there." So that's kind of where this conversation started from, having these conversations about bad kids, the labels that they get, how they get them, and what we can do or not do as educators, what's within our power and what's not within our power. So that's the conversation we want to have today. So there are no bad kids, only bad choices. So choose to be great is what the door said. Tell me, what are your thoughts about this? Let's just talk about it. What do y'all think?
I kind of personally, just the topic in itself is kind of one of those things that just makes you cringe when you hear it. Just because as an educator, you just think of all the people and other educators, even parents, administrators that you've heard call children bad. Like, "Oh, he's so bad. Oh, they got on my nerves today," whatever the conversation may be. And really when it comes down to it, because I've been guilty of saying those things as well. I'm not going to sit up and act like I've never called a child bad, because I absolutely have. Especially at the end of the day when little Timmy has just worked my last nerve. Mm-hmm. I may say that he's bad, but really when it comes down to it, it's not that the child is bad, in my opinion, is that they make bad choices. Kind of piggybacking off of what you said, they're making bad choices. And sometimes you have those kids that consistently and continually make those bad choices. And I still don't necessarily know that child is bad, other than just the fact that they're choices. They're not making good choices. And I also think it's important for us to remember that a lot of times we have to teach kids the correct choices to make. We get caught up in, you ought to know better, or you should know better, or that that's not what you're supposed to do. But a lot of times our kids don't know. Like, we take for granted and we say, "You should have known that was not a good choice." But what happens when they don't know? When they don't know that what they did was a bad choice. So I think it's just, it really has more to do with them not knowing a lot of times. But then you do have sometimes where they're going to know that it's bad and they're going to do it anyway. So then what do you do when you run into that situation?
Touche. Jeff, what say you?
I think the thing that I've noticed about kids is accountability. For example, like if you tell a student, "Okay, y'all can't play basketball in the morning," right? And you're the only one who tells them you can't play basketball in the morning. And I'm like, you're the only one who says anything, so I'm going to do it anyway. I think a lot of times when kids don't get the reinforcement over and over again until it gets to that annoying point, like I'm that teacher. I'm the annoying one that tells them every day, "No, you're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do this." Because I can't assume that they know better, because like you said, we assume that you should know better, you should know better. And it gets to a point to where they're seniors and they're like, "You should know better." But they don't, because nobody reinforces it. And so I think a lot of times kids aren't necessarily, again, call kids bad all the time. Not going to say I'm not going to do it tomorrow. So what I'm saying is that we have to continue to reinforce the things that are positive. Again, reminding them that, hey, yes, you made this mistake, but you're better than this. I expect you to do better. And of course, don't I've heard it a number of times, coddle them, like, it's okay. Like, you got to tell them, no, it's not okay.
No.
But I'm still going to respect you as a person, but I expect you to do better. And I think there comes a time where we have to start holding people accountable, even if it makes us uncomfortable. And so
that's
what
cool.
I think.
So let's talk about the flip side of that then, because I've had the experience in the classroom, and then when I became an administrator, I got to get the opportunity to start going into other teachers' classes, especially when I was an instructional coach. And I was baffled sometimes to see what some people had going on in their classrooms. I was like, I'm in here, we talk in our planning meetings, we say what we're doing, we talk about all this stuff, and then when I go into somebody's classroom, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I would misbehave in this classroom because, one, your lesson is boring. I'm a grown adult. I'm coming in here to observe, and I'm about to fall asleep.
Right.
And you expect a 14 and 15-year-old to stay awake. So my question is, how much of the onus can we put on students, and how much do we have to own as educators? Like, man, that was really a boring lesson, man. That was really lame what I did. Like, yeah, they were off task. Because you can see the same kid go from your class acting a fool and go to your class and act how they should, whatever that means. And then everybody's confused and their mama's mad.
I think it's really important that the educator reflect on their own practice and what type of classroom management practices do you have in place in your own classroom to make sure that the kids are held accountable for their actions. I know, for example, in my classroom, and I teach elementary, by the way, in my classroom, we use champs. So that tells you when you come in, what your conversation should be, what you need to do if you need help. Yeah, I love champs. I love it. So champs is basically telling you what your conversation should be, what your help should be, what your activity is, what your movement is, what your participation should be, and what leads to success. You also have to keep in mind that Stephanie here is, she's used to the older kids, whereas with the younger kids, I feel like they need that structure.
They need to be micromanaged down to the second.
Not necessarily, but they need structure. And I've never had a child that did not love structure, that didn't love, and the same child that I'm telling, check your champs. What is the conversation? If our conversation is at a level 0, your voices need to be off. That's the same kid that's running up to me, giving me a hug before they leave out the door. So kids don't hate discipline or structure. They actually appreciate it, because we also have to keep in mind that a lot of them are coming from homes where they don't have that structure. So to have that order and that structure when they get into the classroom, a lot of times it makes them feel safe. So that's my viewpoint on it. I love champs. It sets you up for success. What are you supposed to be doing right now? If you need help, what do you need to do? Do you raise your hand? Can you talk to a partner? Can you get up and move whenever you feel like it? Or is the movement at no movement? Or can I move as needed? It sets you up for success. So then I don't have to ask you, why are you up out of your seat? Because you can look at the champs and know what's acceptable right now for the activity that we're doing.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Champs work for me because they getting paid. A lot of people doing champs. When I was in Fort Bend ISD, we were doing champs. So somebody getting paid.
Look, I've never heard of champs.
That's because you're secondary
right now. Yeah. So
it could work. They tried it, but we didn't.
So I think you touched on something like structure and making sure that like kids know what they're doing at all times. And I think sometimes we as educators we may get lazy at times. Trying to say, okay, y'all should know better, so I'm not going to reiterate what should be already known. But you can't do that, because once you give them that little inch, we all know people take miles and stuff like that. So we have to make sure that we're always on our game, so that kids know that, okay, Mr. O, yeah, he's not playing that. And, and when I go to someone else's class, I also know that they are not playing that. And when they continue to go to teachers who are not playing that, there's no room for them to play per se. So we all have to make sure that we're doing our job.
It just sounds like consistency is basically, and I know at the elementary level, we collaborate a lot. So for example, there's a pod of 3 teachers in my rotation, and all of our rules are the same, or what we're calling expectations this year. Our expectations are the same. So when you go into this classroom or the other two classrooms, you're expected to have the same behavior across the board. Whether we all decide to use champs, if whatever the procedures are in that classroom, because I feel like when there's a lack of consistency among the classrooms and with the adults, that's when the kids get lax. Well, I don't have to do this when I'm in such and such room, but then when I come to Mr. O room, I gotta, So when the teachers are on one accord and when the teachers are consistent, that's when you see the kids fall in line, because they know, oh, well, it's gonna be the same way when I go to this class or this class, and then they're not confused.
Yeah, but sometimes we got the same thing posted on the wall, but I get a consequence in one class, and in the other class I get 3 warnings followed by 2 phone calls home to my parent, followed by a step out into the hallway. But I'm going to pivot then to the next part of the question, which is one of our viewers, Angel Hicks, she commented the other day. She said she thinks it depends on the educator and their thoughts on how to function in the face of it. Are you quick to anger, or do you see yourself as an authoritarian or a friend of your student? And do you have healthy balance? So her point is it that the students are necessarily always misbehaving, or that teachers may be overreacting and over-responding? And to that point, before you answer, I'm going to say, we know statistically that African-American students are being over-disciplined in terms of exclusionary discipline when it comes to in-school suspension placements, out-of-school suspension, and alternative placements. We have more African-American students getting those kind of punishments. So is it that we just are biologically predisposed to act worse than other kids? What do y'all think is going on? Because I just don't want to see that.
Right. I feel like a lot, just the first part of what you were saying, a lot of times you're getting educators, and I can't speak for everyone, I can only speak for what I've seen, but instead of responding to the behavior, they're reacting to the behavior. So instead of finding a response that's appropriate for the behavior that the child had, you're not gonna talk to me like that. This my classroom. Right, you want to get into all this into a battle. You're getting into a battle with a child. Yes, and you are supposed to be the adult, the role model. You are supposed to show them the appropriate way to act. And I'm not going to sit up here and act like a saint, like I've never lost my cool. Because sometimes little Timmy, he'll push it out. Try your life. Don't try it. Timmy. But, 9 times out of 10, I try to make sure that I'm responding in an appropriate way as to not combat the child or to be combative with that child. Yeah. This is our classroom. Yeah. You are disrupting our learning environment. Let me pull you to the side and let's have a conversation to see what I can do to help you be successful.
But that is a professional, what you're saying is a professional response. Right. What the problem is some people take it personal. You take the misbehavior of a child, the emotional distress of a child, and take it on like it's personal. Like I've heard teachers going back and forth, in secondary. This ain't an elementary thing. In full cussing, I'm talking about full cussing. In a full cussing back and forth with a child, and I'm just like, how does a child get you that riled up? Like, how do you care that much? Like, I don't care. I mean, I care about my students and I love my students. But you're not on my level enough to the point where you can get me to come outside my face and just really just let you have it like we about to box. Like, I've never understood that.
So, again, I'm not going to act like I've never back and forth.
No, we've all had a moment. I'm not saying some people do it.
And I think you have to get to a point to where you're like, hey, step outside. I didn't do nothing. You didn't do anything. But if you stay here... something is going to go wrong. Somebody's going to do something that they shouldn't, and it's more than likely going to be me.
And I'm going to be fired.
I like working here.
Right. So I like my job.
I need you to step outside just for a few moments so we can both cool off.
I'm setting us both up for success right now.
And I've gotten to a point to where, I'm just like, man, just get out. Just get out. Because, like you said, it's to a point to where, you have to remember that, yes, they are kids, but, again, you have to remember that you are human, too. And there are some things that you may not be well equipped to do in that moment. Not saying that you're not a good person to do that, but I think sometimes we might have had 2 or 3 people, somebody cut us off in traffic. We're already mad about that. Come to school, people print out 300 papers in the morning, so your lesson ain't gonna go.
And then they jam the printer every time.
It happens because it happened to me last week. So Again, to the point, I think that we have to make sure, yes, we care, but we can't overcare to the point to where we cussing out kids in the classroom because we care so much.
It's hard to come back to that, and like you said, not being a saint, I've had my moments too. I had a student one time. I had asked him already to leave. He refused to leave after I had asked him several times to leave. And so this was a student that was extremely disrespectful. And he said something about, and before I knew, I told him, "Get your disrespectful out of my classroom right now." And my students, everybody sat up straight, like, "Oh, somebody finna get a whooping." And I dismissed myself. I walked out to my AP's office, was across the way, and I said, "Y'all better come get him right now because I'm gonna get fired." And then they just politely came across the hall and they got him out. And I came back and I apologized to my students. I called his mom immediately and let her know what I said to your son, and this is what happened, and I apologize to you, apologize to him. But when I came back in the room and apologized to the kids, they was like, "Oh, Miss Bart, he needed to get cussed out because he always act like that. Our teachers cuss all the time." And then they just moved on like it wasn't nothing. And to me, it was really a big deal because I had just cussed out a student.
And you're a professional, and you knew that it wasn't the right choice. But I feel as if your actions afterward, apologizing to the child, calling the parent to inform them of what happened, that's the perfect, because we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, but it's what you do after that.
Right. Because I don't take it personal. I've been called a B before. You know, I taught seniors who were not going to be able to graduate because of their research paper in my class, and they blamed it on me and not themselves. And so I never take it personally. And that's the thing that always gets me is those teachers that really take misbehaviors personally. Which brings me to the next point, the ADHD diagnosis. Okay, so it's an explosion now. There's been a 70% increase for Black children, and Black boys are diagnosed with ADHD more than any other group. In 1990, there was 600,000 kids being medicated for ADHD. That's 1990, 600,000. In 2014, there were 3.5 million children being medicated for ADHD. And so what's the educator's role in addressing this explosion of the diagnosis? And I'm gonna start with that part of the question. What's the educator's role? Because if you've never been a part of this process, it heavily depends on the teacher identifying the behaviors of the student, saying, "Oh yes, little Jimmy does this and this and this," and the diagnosis kind of comes from the educator's recommendation after a series of putting them out and writing them up and all these things that precede these types of diagnoses.
Yeah. Well, and you see, especially in elementary, that's when you really see it starting to explode, and you really see that's the first thing that they want to go to is, "Oh, well, they need to get tested for ADD or ADHD. We need to test them and see what's going on with them." And I'm not saying that it's not beneficial for some children, because it is. You'll see that once they get their testing and they go through their series of meetings or medication, whatever it is, because some students, if you see them on their medication and then off their medication, you can tell the difference immediately. As soon as they walk in the building, you didn't have your medicine. Let's go to the office. But I feel as if it's not always necessary. That shouldn't be the first step. We should be looking at what we're doing as educators. We have to realize what our kids do on a daily basis and what they're capable of, especially our little boys. They can be playing a video game, talking on the cell phone, doing all these things, and then you can ask them a question and they can answer your question perfectly, just because they're used to all that different stimulation. They're used to just having different things going off, different things that they're doing. So when you're asking them to sit still
and face the front
in a desk, that's just not that's not how they learn. That's not how our kids learn anymore. So when you're asking them to do that, first of all, they're bored out of their mind.
I'm bored.
Right. You bored as the teacher teaching that lesson. How you think the kid, you saying, "Oh, I just got to get it taught because it's going to be on the test." You bored.
I'm bored. And I'm
so they are bored. They're bored too. So I just feel like as soon as that baby can't sit down, or as soon as he can't stop touching on stuff, we want to try to get them diagnosed.
But let me read some of the descriptors, because for ADHD, I started reading the descriptors and I said, well, maybe I have ADHD.
I have ADHD.
I said, if it's boring, we all got ADHD. Whoever stopped watching this live feed had ADHD, because this is what it says. ADHD often has trouble keeping attention on task. Often avoids, dislikes, or doesn't want to do things that take a lot of mental effort for a long period of time.
That's a lot of people.
What? is often easily distracted.
Man, that's everybody.
Often fidgets with hands or feet or squirms in the seat when sitting still is expected.
But
How long do you expect a 5-year-old to sit? Okay, hold on. Often gets up from seat when remaining in seat is expected.
I would just like to say, for the educators, or even for people that have been in meetings with at your job, how many of those characteristics have you exhibited?
All of them. If it's not for my cell phone, I wouldn't have made it through half the meetings of my life.
Like, you are sitting in a meeting, you laying, you everywhere.
If it's something that's not engaging you,
right?
Something you're not interested in. We all exhibit characteristics. So to me, what I see in my research and in my observations is that it seems as if there is a cultural conflict a lot of times where we're not plugging into what the kids are interested in, what they like, what they want to do. It's just so much teacher-centered that we say, well, this is what I have planned, and you need to sit down and get it. Now, everybody got to sit down sometimes and be quiet and just, there's a section. But if you're going longer than 5 or 10 minutes, especially with little kids, and you just talking, they just need to sit and listen. I'm just like, bro, I'm going to have ADHD too.
That's me.
We got some amens.
We see a lot of you on here agreeing.
The other thing that I wanted to say about like ADHD and medication is like, I remember I used to be like really, really big on get them tested and get them medicated. But I remember when I seen like a kindergartner, like life is because of the medication.
Zombies walking.
Like, it was horrible because this kid was like literally, he had a lot of energy, right? And so like because this is when I used to teach PE, and he would come in and I'll be all over the place. But then like they put him on medicine the next day, and he came in, he was just like,
gone.
I was like,
his soul was gone.
I was like, no,
out of his body.
I'm not for medicine like that. And because a lot of people use it to their advantage, they assume that he must have ADHD. And I don't think all of the time they have ADHD. I just think that there is a lack of consistency. Yes, sometimes classes are boring, but that doesn't mean that they have ADHD. That just means the class is boring and they need to be stimulated because they have phones, iPads, and then don't get me started on, like I said, all the electronics that they have. Like they're technically, like if they want to, they can always be stimulated with something. If you give them an iPad, if you give them an iPhone, if you give them a PS4, Xbox, if you give them the handheld games, if you give them all of these things, they're always going to be stimulated. So when you take those things away, they're waiting. It's like a drug, and since they're always connected, they're always going to want that next thing.
And that's always my argument. My argument is always people say, well, this is how we did school. This is how we learn. This is we don't have to. And my thing is, these kids are different. Digital natives came out of the womb with iPads. And Jackson, my nephew, Tisha's son, he knew before he was even 1 how to find his Mickey Mouse on YouTube, and he could go to the right folder. When you think about what your brain, the way their brains are being overstimulated almost, then you can't be surprised when they come to school and you want to take everything away. Like I said, sometimes you just have to take it away. We're writing to whatever it is for a certain amount of time, but to not engage them then. If you're going to take away their phones, especially like in high school, everybody want to take away their phones, ban the phones because this and that and this. But if you had an activity already planned in which they were going to use the phone for an instructional purpose, a lot of times it will fit right into what you're going to do. For this section of the lesson, your phones are going to be necessary for blah, 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 blah. Well, what if they start texting? What if you're in a professional development and you texting? You do it.
We do.
We see you.
We do it.
Like you're texting too. But did that keep you from getting the task complete? Sometimes with some kids, they can't handle it. But some kids, they really could. You can give them iPads where they're not going to be able to text and whatever and use the school iPads, whatever. But the point is, there's just a lot with this ADHD thing. And it's scary for me because I remember I talked to a teacher one time. We had a student who was a dancer, like in his soul. If he's walking down the hallway to the restroom, he's just, that's just what he does. He got a lot of energy. If you let him go to the gym, he'll run all day. So in class, when she's having this moment where she has to talk or it's time to do independent activities, she just let him stand up or sit down on the floor. Everybody, okay, it's time to do your assignment. If you want to sit down on the floor, you can. If you want to stand up here. And so he likes to stand up. And he might be wiggling a little bit when you walk by, but he's still doing his work. But that little opportunity to just loosen up and get that energy, it didn't hurt anybody.
Right.
Like nobody was hurt because you didn't sit in the desk and face the front. And so sometimes I feel like it's just a matter of relinquishing that control. But I just feel like when you look at these kind of numbers, 3.5 million, and that was in 2014,
right,
being medicated. I mean, I had a student one time, you could tell by his eyes when he came in that he hadn't taken his medicine. They would just be shifting. And I finally asked him one day, I said, now you're old enough to take your medicine. Like, why are you not taking your medicine? And he said, it makes me feel sick. And I said, you feel sick when you don't take it? He said, no, I feel sick when I do take it. I feel like I need to throw up. I feel like I'm not very hungry. And so they already had an attention deficit thing. And now they have a whole nother from all the side effects that are related to the medicine that he was just zombied out all day. And I felt so sorry for the little baby.
Yeah. Medicine make you more sick.
And then they have these developmental things where they're becoming dependent on the drugs.
Yeah. And then, but how, I guess my thing is, because then also you have some kids that really need their medicine and it does alter their personality in the moment when they're on the medication, but it helps them learn because they're not as hyperactive and they're not crawling on the floor under the desk. Because for some kids, it is that severe. They are crawling on the floor, they jumping up on the desk, they just can't control themselves. But when they're on the medicine, although it does alter the way they act and their personality, they're able to sit still long enough to learn something.
What if they can learn without sitting still?
Yeah, they could. I'm sure that they could. but at the times when it's required that you just sit for a minute, they're able to at least sit for a minute they're able to sit for a minute and get the information that you're trying to give to them. Because every now and then, even if it's just for the instructions, I need you to just sit for a second and listen, and then we can go out and do whatever activity we're about to do. But some kids can't sit for a minute and listen to a set of instructions.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's kind of
like some kids. I mean, I've heard of extreme cases, but I think sometimes there's really a cultural disconnect, and there's a stigma around Black boys, and students of color in general, but Black boys specifically. And then these labels, and once they get the label, it's just kind of like, oh, that's Devontae. You know, he turns up, baby, so he does. And then it's just him over there. So we got some comments while we were talking that we want to address because we have about 3 minutes left until we wrap. If you have any comments, questions, concerns about anything we've talked about, I'm Stephanie from the Fresh Classroom. We teach teachers how to become more culturally responsive, and FRESH stands for fun, relevant, engaging, standards-based, and higher order. We teach them how to get fresh in the classroom. So you can visit the website, stephanieboyce.com. If you're at school or a school that you know could stand to get a little bit more fresh. All right, what we got?
I don't want it to be over.
To Michael, no?
No, go ahead. I was talking to you.
She said, but how do you gain consistency when individuals close doors and it's not the same thing whether or not we discuss the targeted results and how to follow it?
That's a good point, Michael. And I think that's what Tish was talking about. You got to have accountability. But that can't always come from the teachers because the teachers aren't in each other's classrooms. Like you got to have administrators that are consistently in classrooms. When I was a AP intern underneath one of the best principals in the world, shout out Dr. Howard, Tanya Howard. She was in classrooms. She was meeting with teachers in their team meetings every week. She reviewed every single lesson plan. It was ridiculously phenomenal. I never knew it was possible, but the administrators had to be the difference because they were going in to make sure that everybody was kind of implementing things. But it's hard when you agree on something that people go in their room and they're just like, I don't got time for that because it's too much.
I think you're right. People who are not teachers coming in classrooms, it makes a shift in the classroom because they know that other people are coming in. For example, this happened literally today. So my principal came in and I teach AVID. And so my principal came in and the kids, they were kind of getting how tutorials go, but they were like kind of playing around and I was like, oh Lord, what am I going to do? So literally she walks in and she sits down and then all the kids were like, nah, we can't play no more. So they all sat up straight and was like, okay. So they were explaining the tutorial. She was asking them questions like, when you come in class, it's okay to be involved so that the kids know that Mr. Riverboy is not the only one looking at y'all. Like, there are other people looking at y'all. And I tell them every day, like, I'm not the only person concerned about your growth. Other people are going to come in here, and people will randomly come in my classroom. And luckily, you know, I like teaching, so I'm doing my job. So they're not coming in looking at me like me, I'm like this, like leaning back, talking about, okay, somebody go and do this.
That's the worst.
Yeah, so I'm doing my job. So when people come in, they know that the kids are being taught. And it's just, you know, come in classrooms. Like, they need to see other people in classrooms. And some people may not like that. Why are you always in my classroom? You should be glad that
right, but if you're
doing
your job, why do you care? If somebody, I never cared. I used to ask them, when you come in my classroom, I'm doing this lesson, I'd like some feedback. They're like, we know you good down there.
Right.
And they would just leave me alone.
I get a lot of
I'm
that.
like, but I want to grow too.
People want to, a lot of people that are doing the dog and pony shows, and you know, they need to know when someone is coming in. But like you said, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, it doesn't matter who comes in or when they come in. You'll be in some part of your lesson cycle, and they'll see that learning is going on in your classroom.
Yeah.
I see some of my comments kind of stopped, but Chris Boyce had a question about how much of the ADHD issue could be solved by giving kids a physical outlet, for example, PE or recess. And I know in elementary, they do. It's required in my district that the elementary students get 30 minutes of recess each day. That's something we're not allowed to touch. You can be, you know, don't have the worst behavior out of the day, and you still get to go to recess. We don't get to take that away from you. So it helps. It really does, because if you have a student that's extremely hyperactive and they're all over the place, when they get that outlet to go outside and just run it out for a while, it helps a lot.
But how much of that is the responsibility of the parent? I'm going to say that because I had a conversation with a friend the other day, and she was saying she had a kid, her kiddo, the school was trying to say, you know, go through the ADHD testing, She said she takes her kiddo out to do a run in the morning. When she goes to run a mile, she takes the kiddo with her to run. And if you got a kid with a lot of energy, apparently that runs the energy down to start the morning, because recess ain't coming to like the middle of the day. But this person took their kid to run in the morning for a mile before and bring that energy down. And then they were, of course, working on natural ways to use that energy without medicating the kid, and said it changed the kid's life.
I believe it. And that's just showing that you're in tune with the needs of your students. I feel like, and I can't say that all parents do this, but to think that you can send your kid to school and that the teacher is going to be the one to just magically change your child. And don't get me wrong, we do everything that we can do, but we should be in partnership with the parent. So if you know that there's something that your child is struggling with, what are you doing as the parent at home to make sure that your child is successful when you relinquish them to us at school?
Sometimes it's things you can do. And I know it's going to pop off, but we had another comment from Chris Johnson the other day on the post. It said, wouldn't even have near as many problems if you just bring back prayer in school and corporal punishment. Boom. Discussion over. Butt whoopings in Jesus. That's really all you need, is what he said on the post. And Eric McMillan commented to that, hashtag butt whoopings in Jesus is what they said the answer is.
Oh, Lord.
So I know, you know, Jesus is supposed to be gone from the schools, but I'm going to just say this because we over our time by a couple minutes. Jesus was never at the classroom when I was in the classroom, because he is indwelt in me and the church is inside me. So when I went in there, I'm approaching kids with a Christ-like mentality.
Absolutely.
There's times I had to pray with a kid. I asked, because the majority of the kids identify as Christians.
They do.
And I would say, what's your faith? Would you mind if I pray with you? And I have a student lost a brother or some like traumatic things going on. But even when you cannot, even if you don't feel comfortable, some educators, they have just said, I don't feel comfortable, I don't want to get fired. I was willing to get fired for praying for a student. I can find another job. Like that God is surely big enough to find me another job if I get fired for praying with a kid. So my thing was, God was never out the room. I was playing gospel music in the mornings to help us focus and get our mind right. And so I just feel like that's a good point that Chris made. But whoopings too, corporal punishment is not illegal in the state of Texas.
It's not.
People still doing corporal punishment. But Jeff made a good point about how it has to be put into the context of other things.
I think when people do the whole, it goes into many things that we may be a part of, like they only do the whipping part, but they don't come back and check to see like, okay, how is the kid feeling after this? And also putting words of affirmation, like, okay, I know I gave you this whooping, but here's what I gave it to you for. Absolutely. And I wouldn't have to give you this whooping if you just did this. So let's not
whip you again.
Let's not continue this you getting these whippings if you just did this, this, and this. Do you think you can do this? Why don't you think you can do this? Let's have a conversation of why you feel like you can't do this. And by the time you get to that conversation, it's like, okay, like, I get it. Like, okay, so let me try and do something different so I don't have to continue to go this route. And then if that's the case, if they continue to do those things, you have to really discuss with the parents, like, look, this might not be the place for your kid. And a lot of, and the thing is this, a lot of school districts are now open enrollment, so you could take them down the road. It might be a little bit more, trouble.
Listen, I'm a supporter of that. I don't care if you got 3 kids going to 3 separate schools. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. I was doing a consultation. You have to do what works best for your child.
Yep.
And when we were at the private school that we started, we had a family that was bringing one daughter there, and she was really in love with that. Another kid went to the public school down the street, and she loved it there. Like, every kid needs something different, and you gotta give them what they need when if you can. I mean,
it can't always not that it can't be what's convenient for the parent, but you also want to think about what's going to set your child up for success. And if it's being at another school, then that may have to be the option. But a lot of what I was hearing Jeff say is building relationships with the kids. You're saying after you receive this corporal punishment, I need to come down and check on you. Maybe later on that day, and then the next day pop in your classroom. Hey, how we doing today? Is it anything, They
have to know you're not keeping a record of their wrongs.
Yeah.
Because it's not personal. You made a bad choice, you're going to get a consequence, and then tomorrow, even if it's not corporal punishment, even if it's suspension, if it's you got a referral yesterday, when you come back to you feeling better, you ready for a fresh start. I had to go visit a kid in alternative school one time. What?
Fresh start. I see what you did there.
Get yourself fresh. I had to go to alternative school one time and not like, come out here. How you doing? A kid that I had to send to alternative school because it was a 0 tolerance policy. But for them to know that, okay, it's not the end of the road. And for me, that was important because I was one of those kids that people called the bad kid when I was in school, and I had gone to alternative school multiple times, and I had gone to jail when I was 16. Like, I had a lot of stuff going on. So if somebody would have if my mom would have let people label me the bad kid, which she totally did not, she just always told me, you a child of God, you know better than that. Every time I was kept doing bad stuff, she just kept saying, you a child of God, you know better than that, you're going to be better than that. And she proclaimed those things over my life until they actually came to pass, because when I was fighting acting a fool, they weren't coming to pass. But you had another comment?
Yes, from Constance Renee Anderson. She said, yes, having active administrators is important, but how do we help administrators understand that being active is what's needed?
Well, it's in the description when you take the test and get all the training. So I think they know. It's just a matter of, I didn't realize till I became an administrator, there is so many other things going on that you have to be responsible for, that even like me, I had an ultimate desire to be in the classrooms. If I could not process any referrals and be in classrooms all day, I would have done that. But we spent the whole day processing referrals. So to me, it was a double-edged sword, because I felt like if we were in classes supporting teachers more and making instruction better, we would have had less discipline issues. So one of them kind of goes, it goes hand in hand for me. So you just have to have administrators, but then that goes to your district. Your district has to be committed to training and developing It's just all a big spiral, in my opinion.
I think one thing that I did was when I had a meeting with my administrator, I said, look, I need you to come in the classroom.
Absolutely.
Like, I need you to do that. Like, that's something that I need from you.
Help me.
Yeah, not because like I'm not like A1, educator, but I'm good at what I do.
Right.
But I would like that extra support, because we all need support. I'm not perfect. So I would like for you to be in my classroom. And, she's come in a couple times. No, and that's not, because I know, they're busy. So I'm appreciative of the time that she has come. Because like I said earlier, when they see people in the classroom, like let me make sure I'm on, just like adults do when people come in the classroom, kids do the same thing. And when they not sure of when somebody's coming in, they're always going to be on their A game. So it just makes it better.
I used to live for the feedback. Please give me feedback. I want to make my practice better. Yes. Like, did you see what I was doing? Like, what would you say? How can I make it better?
Yeah. And then also, that's all the comments. I was just going to respond to what you all were just saying, and just being able to have those conversations with your administrator as a professional. If it's something you feel as if you're lacking or that you need to help yourself grow professionally, being able to have those conversations with them, because there's always a professional way that you can approach your administrator to let them know what you need to help you grow in a professional capacity. So if you feel as if you need more classroom observations, or if you feel as if you need a particular type of training on your campus, whatever it is that you feel like you need, voicing that, because if you don't say anything, we may assume that they know and they may not know. Yeah. So just make sure that you voice those things that you feel would help you.
Amen, sister. Amen to that. Well, I think that's going to be the last comment. Everybody, yeah. Everybody else was just co-signing or saying amen as we were talking. Thank y'all for tuning in to the first episode of Fresh Talks. What is it? Fresh Chats. Fresh Chats with Steph, featuring Tish and Jeff. And I appreciate y'all for coming through. It's been real fresh or whatever. Contact me at stephanieboyce.com for all of your fresh needs. If you need your campus or your district to get fresh, we meet all week long with principals for consultations to see what your needs are, and we customize professional learning experiences. So thank y'all again for tuning in. See how I did the music right there?
I like how you did that.